If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath Bequee, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of 3. Join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth and postnatal recovery, helping you have a wonderful pregnancy and afterbirth experience. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Welcome to episode 53 of the Fitness Mama podcast. I am your host, Kath Bequee. I'm a mum of 3 young girls, a physio for women, and I have an online community, Fitness Mama, which helps to provide pregnant and new mothers with the exercises, support and resources they need to feel good from the inside out as they prepare for and recover from childbirth. Fitness Mama has workouts that are tired mum friendly, achy mum friendly, and toddler friendly that you can do in the convenience of your home at the end of the long day or whilst your bubba sleeps. I have the pleasure of chatting with Lauren Brenton all about the first 24 hours after giving birth. Lauren is a registered midwife and mum of 3 little kids. Lauren loves to help educate and empower women along their pregnancy, labour, birth and postnatal journey to motherhood. Lauren believes it is of the utmost importance that women are informed about every aspect of their maternity care, involved in the decision making, and therefore supported to have the best possible experience that they can. Lauren works across the continuum from antenatal care, delivery suite, which she loves the most, and postnatal care, which includes the sleeping, the settling, the wrapping, the bathing, breastfeeding and formula feeding. And she is also currently studying her Masters of Midwifery. So stay tuned, as this episode is filled with lots of little nuggets of great information, which will hopefully help you feel more informed, calm and empowered about your first 24 hours with a new bubba, and that is what this podcast is all about. But before we dive in, I do invite you, if you are pregnant or you've had your baby, to come and join the free Fitness Community Facebook group. Simply search Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond by Fitness Mama, and the link is also in the show notes, to come and join this rapidly growing, amazing community of other pregnant and new mums. And they are all there to support each other and cheer each other on during this crazy and beautiful thing we call motherhood. All right, let's get into this episode with Lauren. Hello, Lauren. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's very exciting.
Absolutely. And I'm so excited by our chat. So we're talking about the first 24 hours after having a baby. And I know personally, I prepared for childbirth. I thought I'd prepared really well, but those first 24 hours was such a huge blur. So super exciting to chat. So could you please introduce yourself for anyone listening who doesn't know who you are? Let us know how to find you.
Yes. So my name's Lauren. I'm a registered midwife in Sydney and I run the Instagram page One Mama Midwife. So I absolutely love everything pregnancy, birth and after birth, as well as having 3 of my own crazy little kids as well. So busy, fun, but lots of love in this house.
Oh, that's great. And if you're not following Lauren, do go and follow her. And all those links will be in the show notes too. So Lauren, let's start at the start. There's so much that happens in those first 24 hours. And there's so many different things we can talk about it. I put a call out on Instagram and I was blown away by all the different topics. And I thought, wow, obviously there's a lot, but there's, lots. So where do we start, Lauren? What can a mum expect in those first 24 hours? I know we're talking about baby questions. We're talking about mum questions. There's so much, but can you just give a bit of an overview to start off with?
Yeah, of course. So Whether you have a cesarean or a vaginal delivery, the most important time is that first hour after birth. That's the time that you really, really want to try and capture and maximize your time with the baby, mostly with skin to skin. So if you are planning on breastfeeding, that first hour after birth is essential in getting your breastfeeding started and bonding with that little baby, helping regulate its heart rate and breathing rate and everything good. So the first hour after birth is sort of where you should start by focusing and just snuggling that baby and really taking it in. Everyone always goes, oh, how much does the baby weigh? How much does it weigh? It's not as important as that first hour of snuggles and skin to skin that you won't get back. So make sure that you really enjoy that time, that first hour, and then worry about weighing the baby and measurements and all of those sorts of things.
So in that first hour, for the mum that's just given birth, and I know this will vary from hospital to hospital, but is she still in the birthing suite for that hour?
Most women are, yeah, most women. So, the baby's born, placed up onto mum's chest. They get skin to skin pretty much immediately. The delayed cord clamping happens in most hospitals as a standard now. So the delayed cord clamping would happen. They'd cut the cord, and then the midwife and or doctor, depending on which route you choose, would take all of the, I want to say mess, but, all of the utensils and the placenta and things out of the room and sort of tidy up the room a little bit and then leave you for a fair bit of time so you can get used to your baby and start, just enjoying that first time together. And then obviously once baby shows signs to be fed, then we'll start feeding baby. But we tend to just sort of sneakily remove ourselves and say, if you need us, we're over here, but stay there. So yeah, most women will be in the birth suite for a fair bit of time after birth.
It's funny because I remember, I'm just thinking back, and it feels like they get you out so quickly. But you're right, it is probably a good hour or so. But it went by so quickly. And
it depends on whether you have an epidural as well. So if you have an epidural, you've got to wait for that to fully wear off and for your legs to be back before you can get up and shower and get out anyway. So that can delay that time in the birth suite as well.
Okay, can you dive into that a little bit more? So if a mum has an epidural, how long does that usually take to wear off, and what happens then?
So that one really varies based on who put it in, so the anaesthetist themselves, and what drugs that they've used, so how heavy the block is. So some women, when they get an epidural, can really easily move their legs and they can still sort of feel their legs, whilst other women can't at all because they're quite heavy and quite dead. So it just depends on the type of epidural, but most take at least 1 to 3 hours to wear off, completely enough for us to be able to put weight on your legs and get up for that shower.
I remember my first 2 kids was no epidural, and I can remember being in the shower so quickly, well, it felt like really quickly, whereas first stand up after an epidural with those jelly legs, I swear, if my husband hadn't been there, I would have been a mess on the floor.
Yep. Some people are like, oh, I think they're mostly back. And I'm like, no, we're not getting up on mostly. Like, we're waiting for fully. I can't catch you.
Yeah. And once you have your baby, how does the first feed generally happen?
So generally, we take all of the things out of the birth room, tidy it up, give you a little bit of time and sort of explain to you that your baby, if you're having skin to skin, and your baby should start showing us signs that they're hungry. They might start opening their mouth, looking around, licking their lips, little things like that. And they're the first signs that we want to know that Bub's hungry. So once they start showing those signs, we always say, grab us or buzz us and we'll come in and we'll help you and try and attach the baby within that first hour, because that's generally when they're most alert and most able and ready to feed.
And how does that look? And I'm asking this because I had a few comments on Instagram where they were shocked at how they were hand expressed and they weren't expecting it. So yeah, how does that look?
And that again just depends on who's looking after you. So I'm a very hands-off breastfeeding teacher. I like to sort of get the dummies and explain as best as I can before trying to help with my own hands, as I just find it doesn't really teach them how to do it if I'm just doing it for you. But then again, some other midwives find that they're able to best teach by doing it for them that first time. So it really depends. So sometimes the midwife might ask consent first to touch the woman's breast and try and attach the baby that way, or the midwife might explain it first and try and get you to do it and try and move you and mold you a little bit as you go through. In saying that, if baby isn't wanting to feed and isn't interested, then we do try and get you to hand express. Either the midwife will do it or we'll teach it. So I kind of always try and teach the mum first. And if she's not getting anything out, then I'll say, do you mind if I have a go and see if I can get any colostrum out for bub? And we could feed that colostrum to the baby in a syringe. So it is a bit confronting in terms of not realizing that, you're going to have this baby and everything's going to be done. And then all of a sudden we're going to be touching your boobs and trying to get milk out. And it can be a little bit overwhelming and confronting.
Before you've had babies, no one really, apart from your partner, has ever touched your boob, and then suddenly you've got these complete strangers just getting in there. And it was fine by my second and third child. I was totally used to it, but I distinctly do remember that first surprise.
Yeah, and I think with my first baby, I remember being like, what are you doing? Why are you what are you doing to me? So your midwife should always ask you and explain first what they're doing and why. And if they go to do something that you're not happy with, you can always say, can you stop and explain to me what you're doing and why? And can I try and do it first? And if I can't, then you do it. You've always got an option to say stop.
Now, if anything happens like an episiotomy, is there anything different that's in terms of recovery? Like, can we expect that time is going to be delayed a bit while they're doing the episiotomy, and like if they have to take you into theatre, that sort of thing? This episode is brought to you by Baby Bee, Australian-owned and designed prams combining quality, safety and style. Not only does Baby Bee let you try their prams at home with free returns for 9 months, yes, that's 9 months, they also offer an industry-leading 3-year warranty for total peace of mind. With thousands of 5-star reviews, around-the-clock customer care, and up to $300 of free accessories with every pram, what are you waiting for? Go visit www.babybeeonline.com and check them out for yourself. And yes, for listeners of the podcast, there is a 20% discount code. Enter FITBEE, FITBEE 20 at checkout, and T's and C's apply.
Yeah, so with an episiotomy, there's not really a whole lot of changes to a tear. I mean, the healing can sometimes take a little bit longer afterwards, so a few more weeks longer and that sort of thing. But generally, it happens at the time of delivery and you'll be stitched up fairly quickly after delivery in most hospitals. So that sort of delay isn't as big of a deal because, the tears and episiotomy suturing's fairly the same. You just want to ice straight away. That's my biggest thing. Like, as soon as that baby is out and you are stitched up, you need ice straight away so that you don't get all of that swelling, because once it's all goes there, it's, you've got the time for it to then go away. So as soon as you can get ice on that peri, the better.
Yeah, I love it. That's what I always preach too. And I tend to recommend a new ice pack with every pad change. Is that what you recommend? And with every breastfeed?
As soon as you feel that ice pack is starting to go warm, you want to get rid of it. So as soon as it's not cold for you anymore, chuck it and get a new one. Because with your perineum, obviously it's a wound, whether it's been cut or torn, it's still a wound. So you want to reduce any infectious signs or symptoms. So you need to make sure it stays dry, clean. And so you don't want it to be wet from a melted ice pack and then warm. So it's a complete opposite to what we want. So as soon as it's warm, it's gone.
Great tip. Thank you. Okay, so the first hour has passed. You've gone into your wardroom. What can we expect from then on? Let's start with a baby.
Yeah, so I think that first 24 hours with a baby are really, really varied. Like, some people have not an angry baby, but a really awake baby, and one that really, really, really wants to feed and be cuddled and snuggled and not put down. And then other people have this baby that they're trying to wake up and going, it's not waking to feed. Like, is there something wrong with it? So that first sort of 24 hours are really varied. And kind of as long as that baby has one really good breastfeed, straight after birth, they can go up to 12 hours without a feed. They physically can. We don't obviously want that, and we try to encourage, the baby to be fed at least 4 to 6 hours. But, if it's not taking it and it really doesn't want it, and we're trying to finger feed it and it doesn't want it, then there's not much you can do. As long as that baby's blood sugar is fine, it's fine to keep sleeping. So it's just, a really varied time. Some people have the really awake baby, and then other people have a really asleep baby.
Yeah. Okay. That might involve pumping for a mum, is that right? Or just
generally don't start pumping in that first 24 hours. We might hand express just because we can get more out. So a pump, obviously it's got lots of parts and connections. So any good colostrum that we do get, most of it gets lost in the pump. So we tend to not start pumping until either the milk's in, or we're trying to really bring the milk in if we're worried that the mum's milk might be a little bit delayed. So that sort of comes a bit later, but we would definitely get her hand expressing if we were worried about feeds and that sort of thing.
Yeah, brilliant. So apart from feeds, what else happens to the baby generally? Are there any milestones it needs to tick off?
Weights and measurements and all that is always a big milestone. And we, straight after birth, we'll do a really big check of the baby. And some hospitals have a pediatrician come and check the baby in that first 24 hours. Others don't. So that's just sort of a hospital thing, but it will always get checked by an approved person before it goes home. And then just sort of wheeze and poos. So we get really excited by the wheeze and poos, that really horrible first meconium poo that baby will do in the first 24 hours. So it's really black, sticky amniotic fluid. You'll remember it from your baby. Yeah, so we want baby in that first 24 hours. We really want baby to have at least one poo and at least one wet nappy.
Okay, just one poo and one wet nappy.
Okay. First 24 hours, one wee, one poo.
Great. And there'd be quite a few mums listening that are going home on the same day. Are they told that before they go home? That's what you're aiming for?
Yeah, so mums that go home pretty soon after birth are generally given sort of a bunch of pamphlets or a little book or something like that. Again, every hospital is different, but to say that this is what you should expect in the first week. And again, the ones that do go home the first day, they have a midwife come and visit them at home. I think it's 2 or 3 times, depending on the hospital, to just really reinforce that and go through that. So, the first day we want one wee, one poo. The baby's generally settled in between feeds and just wants cuddles most of the time. And then, 24 to 48, 2 wees, 2 poos, that sort of thing. They'll get a big chart with all of the information on it and what color the poos change to and all those fun things.
And that's why I think it's so great that we're talking today, because if the first time you came across that chart was when you had a new baby and you're already going home and you're throwing a few pamphlets, that's full on.
It is definitely full on. It is.
Yeah. Pre-warned is pre-armed. Is that the right saying?
It'll do. It's good.
It'll do. Okay. So we've discussed baby. There's nothing we haven't missed. When's the hearing test usually?
I mean, they can be done in that first 24 hours, but they like to do it sort of after 48, just because you can get false positives, especially cesarean babies. They've got a lot of fluid and they don't get that fluid squeezed out of them because they're sort of born really quickly. Same with if you've had a quick delivery, first time, second time, quick delivery, or a forceps or a vacuum, the babies can get a little bit mucousy and still have a bit of fluid in all their ear canal and their nose and everything like that. So they can fail the hearing test, which can be really scary for mums, but it is common for them to fail if it's done too early and they haven't got rid of all that fluid. So yeah, they tend to do that sort of at the 48-hour mark. But again, depends on when you go home.
Yeah.
And to go early, they'll either tell you to come back or try and do it before you go.
Okay, so moving on to mum questions, because I know there's a lot happening to the mum in that first 24 hours. Just gone back to the ward, fed your baby a few times, you've changed your pad and your ice pack a few times. What else can a mum look forward to in those first 24 hours?
Okay, so some women will have a catheter left in. So cesarean mums will have a catheter left in until the next morning. They'll stay in bed and won't get up, so the catheter stays in, so they don't need to worry about that. Same with some women who have either had a really bad tear or have had an episiotomy. Sometimes they will leave the catheter in overnight just to really let the swelling go down and give you a really good chance your bladder working again properly and feeling like you need to go without too much pain and things like that.
And for those listening, that's a really important thing. Just because you've got a catheter in for a long time, it's not like that's actually a good thing because it's letting the bladder rest And it's helping to potentially prevent issues with urinary retention. Like if you can't wee out all the urine from your bladder, you don't want to develop things like bladder infections and urinary tract infections and all the rest. So that's a good thing. Is that right, Lauren?
Definitely let that swelling go down. And also it can be a little bit less painful if you sort of wait that little bit longer before you go as well.
I don't know if you agree, but often that is an issue where I guess hindsight's a lovely thing, but if the catheter's taken out too early, then it can create issues. So what are some of the signs that women need to be aware of if they do have some bladder issues?
So I guess the main thing is when you feel like your bladder is full and you sit down to go to the toilet, can you pass that urine? Is it coming out? Do you feel like you are emptying your bladder completely? And I mean, it's not going to feel normal, but as normal as it can feel. So you're feeling like, oh, yep, I think, I've weed for a decent amount, like the strength and the amount of it feels fairly normal to before, and that you're not standing up and then needing to go again straight away.
So to clarify, you've got a good urge to void, a good urge to do a wee, and then when you do wee, it's a good empty.
Yes, exactly.
Great. So if you have issues where you're not getting an urge to wee, it might have been hours and hours and hours, what do you suggest then, Lauren?
Yeah, so usually we will be annoying you a fair bit in that 24 hours as well. So we'll be coming in going, have you gone to the toilet? Have you weed? And that sort of thing. So if you haven't weed within that 4 to 6 hour period, we will more than likely do a bladder scan on you and see it, how much have you had, what's been going in and that sort of thing. Try and get you to sit and relax and go. And if that still doesn't work, then most of the time you'll get a catheter reinserted just then for sort of 24 hours to really let your bladder heal and hope that we can start fresh again the next morning.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you are going home in that first 24 hours, I think this is really important to know. Don't ignore the fact that you haven't really had an urge to go to the toilet, or don't ignore the fact if you can't fully empty your bladder and things, because sometimes there's reduced nerve supply and reduced sensation to the bladder, so you're not getting the right sensations. So that's why we need to help the bladder rest with the catheter.
And although the thought of a catheter seems scary and daunting, it's definitely more important than developing problems with the bladder later just because it's something that you ignored at that time.
Great. I think that's a really good one to tick off.
When you do that first wee after birth, you can get a pump water bottle and spray water as you're going just to really help neutralize your urine so it's not painful for you. I think that's my biggest tip with that first wee.
And for those women that are having difficulties with initiating that wee or the first few wees, yeah, the pump bottle's great. Do you suggest weeing in the shower or turning a tap on when going to the toilet?
Yeah, weeing in the shower is a really, really good one because, that warm water can help you go, and also the water itself is going to wash away the wee and make it less stinging for you. But yeah, if you find turning on a tap works as well, you can definitely do that. Some people listen to rain noises on their phone and do all weird and wonderful things. So whatever's going to help you is the good way to go.
Yes, and I'm a big fan of learning how to lift your pelvic floor and relax your pelvic floor during pregnancy so that in this early stage, because you might be, without knowing, guarding with your pelvic floor and holding them up a little bit. So having that ability to take some nice deep breaths, relax your tummy muscles and relax your pelvic floor can also really help.
Yeah, exactly.
That was gold for anyone listening. That information is gold. So put that in the memory bank, write it down just for that first few days after birth. Okay, bowel motions.
Yes. So most women actually won't pass a bowel motion within that first 24 hours just because if you've gone into labor naturally, you tend to clear yourself out before labor anyway. Your body tends to do that and at the time of delivery, which is completely fine. We are so used to that. So please don't be worried about that if that's something that you are worried about. But yeah, you tend to just not really need to go in that first 24 hours. So when you do need to go, it's important that you don't try and hold it in and because you're scared. Also on the opposite end of that you don't sit there and really strain, because obviously if you've got stitches or swelling, sitting there and straining on the toilet is going to make that worse. So if you're finding that you feel a little constipated or you want a little bit of help or you've tried to go and you can't, it's always a good idea to give us a buzz and we can give you something to help you go or help it soften soften a little bit to make it a bit easier for you. You can also sort of wrap your hand in toilet paper and hold the stitches if that makes you feel more comfortable in going, and put your knees up higher than your hips on a stool or something like that. Just all those real tricks to try and get you to relax and let it happen naturally without straining.
Love all those tips. And that perineal support, so wrapping toilet paper around your hand, like as Lauren said, and popping it at the front, because I know personally and from patients that they're worried about that sensation that everything's heading south. And they're like, oh my gosh, it's all just going south. So having that perineal support, or that support with the hand at the front, providing that gentle upward support, can then help you again to relax your back passage and take some nice deep breaths, relax your pelvic floor, and hopefully let the urge just happen as it naturally happens.
Exactly. Yeah.
Lovely. So getting onto any stool softeners sooner rather than later if you're at all concerned. Lots of fruit and veg, lots of water.
Lots of walking around as well. In that first 24 hours, you're kind of so sore and stiff and you don't really want to move, but it's so essential that you get up, even if it's just little walks and every day sort of ticking off that you've walked further and further every day. It's really important for all your muscles and for your healing and everything to sort of start going back to normal, that you are walking as much as you feel comfortable. Obviously, don't push yourself, but as much as you feel comfortable walking around.
Yeah, I tend to recommend in that first week just 5-minute bursts. So, pottering around the house or walking to the garden or whatever it is, and then coming back, having a rest, but doing that, quite regularly throughout the day, but not a huge burst all in one go, just lots of little bursts.
Yeah. And I think when you're in the hospital as well, you kind of get a bit stuck in your room. Like you don't tend to venture out. Sometimes we'll have women go, oh, I haven't even been outside of my room in the whole 4 days I was here. So I think it's really important that you even if you're just walking up to the communal tea room and getting a cup of tea and walking back, just any kind of exercise in the hallway that day is going to be good.
Walk to the freezer to get the ice packs. That's your exercise.
Although you'll be probably walking too much then.
Yeah. So we've talked about bladder and bowels in those first 24 hours. Keeping those wounds clean, that's generally just with regular showers and normal soap and water.
Yeah. So, generally you don't need to use soap on any wounds. So just water is fine. Just water and, patting it dry, that sort of thing. Definitely not rubbing where you're going to catch on any stitches. Women who've had a cesarean, generally the wound is covered. So that stays covered for a few days. And it all depends on who's done it as to how soon that bandage comes off. And then same sort of thing, no soaps, no fragrances, just water to keep it clean. And with the perineum, you really want to try and have at least 2 showers a day, just really, and every time you go to the toilet, just rinsing it, just really making sure that you're giving it the best chance to stay clean and dry.
That's where those peri bottles, I think, are really helpful, but they're not given out in hospitals, are they?
No, they're not. No. It'd be nice if they were.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, can we dive into a cesarean birth a little bit more? So you mentioned the catheter usually stays until the next morning, is that right? And then once the catheter is removed, what's the process then?
So usually your midwife will remove your catheter in the morning, depending on when you've had a cesarean. Obviously, if you had it at 2 a.m., they'd wait sort of 12 hours or until you were well controlled pain-wise and all epidurals and things were wearing off. So then the midwife would check your wound and they'd get you, ask you to get some clothes out of your bag. So it's always a good idea, vaginal or cesarean, to have a Ziploc bag that says first outfit for the mum, so that the dad's not rummaging through the bag trying to find out what clothes she wants to wear and that sort of thing. But we then will put your clothes in the bathroom, help you up to the shower. Either your partner will stand in the shower with you or one of us will, just to make sure that you're okay and help you get dressed, things like that. And generally go back to bed and have a little bit more of a rest after that. But it's always a good idea as well for cesarean mums to take pain relief half an hour before that first shower, just to really make it a bit more comfortable for you moving around for that first time.
Can I add using a log roll to get out of bed too? So I love a good log roll. So rather than doing a sit up to get out of bed, roll onto your side and use your arms to push up. Because I'm not a huge fan of those monkey bars. What do you think of them?
Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, but I think they're still kind of using their tummy muscles as they pull. And then I find I'm generally pushing more and it kind of hurts my shoulder a bit more. So I definitely always do the log roll, I find.
Yeah, I don't think they're all that cracked up to be. I think a lot of pressure still goes through the abs. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so we talked about the Caesars, mums, bladder and bowel, baby. Is there anything else you were thinking we needed to tick off?
I think mental health is really super important in that first 24 hours as well. You know, you've kind of just gone into this complete new world that you didn't even know existed. And, you know, people are coming in and out and you're kind of like, oh my gosh, like what is going on? And sometimes just taking a few minutes to, you know, go for a walk, sit outside in the sun, regathering yourself if you need, and then coming back, or, you know, just sitting and chatting and going, I'm really like overwhelmed and this is different to what I expected, and, you know, I'm loving it, that sort of thing. Just talking about how you feel, whether good or bad, I think is so important, and making sure that you have a good support and someone who is going to help you as much as possible in those first 24 hours when you're sore and new and, you know, wanting to learn and absorb all of that information.
Yeah, great point. And have you noticed any big differences with COVID lockdowns in terms of how many visitors women can have and how that's affecting the mums?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm in New South Wales at the moment, and so we're on absolutely no visitors. And I find that a lot of women are getting a lot more anxious before birth and, you know, getting really stressed. And then I've seen a slight increase in inductions just because people are really getting anxious. They might not be going into spontaneous labor on their own because they are worried about it. But in saying that, a lot of the feedback hasn't been too bad. A lot of people have said it's actually been quite nice to just spend that one-on-one time without 50 people constantly coming in. And breastfeeding rates have been really great because people are calling us more for help, and they're not trying to take advice from mums or sisters that might not be quite up to date anymore. So in that regard, it's been quite nice. But yeah, you do see that they miss the support from mothers especially.
Yeah, no, I totally can understand both the pros and the cons. I do distinctly remember a few times my baby needed to be fed. This is for my first baby. But I would have had a visitor who was just arriving, or, you know, there'd be someone just stepping in because there were people in and out the whole time, and I had no confidence. I didn't want to be...
Didn't also want to pull your boob out in front of random people that you didn't know either. So
yeah, it's tricky when you're just trying to establish breastfeeding.
Yeah, so in that regard, it's been a bit better, but
yeah. So just to finish off, because I did want to just ask about what are some watch points, or what should a mum be aware of? We've touched on it a little bit with the bladder side of things, but when should a mum call the midwife or call the doctor in those first 24, 48 hours? What's something that we should be aware of?
In terms of breastfeeding, I think that in that first 24 hours, you should really call on us for help, or even just checking the latch for as many feeds as you feel comfortable, just to really make sure you're not doing damage in that first 24 hours, especially if you've got pain relief that's wearing off. You might not quite feel if it's perfect or not. And then we don't want any cracked nipples, any bleeding, anything like that. We don't want. So we don't want pain at breastfeeding. So that's a big one to call us for. Don't just push through if you have any pain, because a baby won't be getting anything if it's not latched properly and you're getting damaged. So it's not good for anyone.
Can I just remark that's a lovely point, because I do remember, you know, you feel bad interrupting the midwives, like they're busy, and to think, oh, I just need to feed my baby, but to have to feel like you have to call them every time, I didn't love that. So thank you for mentioning that, to just give women there the confidence to press.
Yeah, I know it's hard, but at the end of the day, if we help you as much as we can in that first 24 hours, then the rest of your journey, you won't need us as much, because we're not trying to undo damage that's been done already. So we love it. Use us.
Yes, great. And once you've got those cracked nipples, it's
hard to go back.
Yep.
Another one is postpartum bleeding. So a lot of women don't realize that you do bleed after birth. I think that's sort of one of the biggest shocks as well. So you can bleed for up to 6 weeks after birth, but it is heaviest in that 24 hours. So if you're soaking more than one maternity pad every hour, you really need to let us know, and you need to sort of start leaving the pads for us to check. Potentially we'll start weighing them if we're worried about how much blood you're losing in that first 24 hours, 48 hours as well. If you have blood clots that are bigger than 50 cents, please leave them for us as well. If they're on your pad, leave them for us to check, because what we do is we actually pull them apart and we make sure that there's no bits of placenta or amniotic membranes in there that we might have missed. So it's really important you leave them for us as well.
Lovely. And if you did find that, what would be the procedure generally?
So we would monitor you a fair bit more closely. So we'd be doing lots of rubs on your tummy. So we'd rub the fundus, so the top of your uterus, and really try and make sure that that feels nice and well contracted. Potentially, if there is worry that there is a lot of products left inside, you might get an ultrasound and have to have it removed surgically, worst case scenario. But most of the time, if it's just a little bit, the body will expel it. But we do like to just check and make sure that there's nothing in there.
Brilliant. We've covered a lot. Thank you, Lauren.
Okay, thank you.
Just checking my list. Yes, even though it's a big 24 hours and it can be super overwhelming, hopefully by listening to this podcast episode, you feel a little bit more reassured and empowered about what's coming.
Hopefully, yes.
And if you could, I'm putting you on the spot here, but if you just had one piece of advice for mums who are about to have a baby, what would it be?
It's going to be cliche, but really enjoy it. Enjoy those first moments and don't stress too much on routines and trying to plan and the baby to try and fit in a box. Just enjoy the baby and let the baby feed when it wants to feed, and really just snuggle it as much as you can. You can't over cuddle a baby. So just love on that little bub, because then they turn into crazy 2-year-olds that go, no, when you ask for a cuddle. So really.
That's right. You can never get those 24 hours back again.
Exactly. That's it.
Thank you so much, Lauren. So everyone go and follow Lauren on Instagram at One Mama Midwife. That's one, the number one, Mama, M-A-M-A, midwife, all one word. And if you enjoyed this episode, send us both a DM and let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much, Lauren.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And before I sign off, remember my team and I will be putting together the show notes for this episode with all the links, including how to connect with Lauren at www.fitnessmama.com/podcast. And don't forget, if you want to come and join our free Facebook community, simply search for Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond by Fitness Mama, or just find the link in the show notes. Have a fabulous day, everyone, and I look forward to you joining me next week for another episode of the Fitness Mama podcast. Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at Fitness Mama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer, materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. I'll see you soon.